My name's Duncan Campbell from the Shire o' Argyll. I've travelled this country for money's the mile. I've travelled through Ireland, Scotland and all, and the name I go under's bold Edinburgh. One night an old Ricky as I walked in the street, a saucy big pole as I chanced for to meet. He glowers in my face and he gave me some jaw, saying, when come ye over bold Edinburgh? Well, I am not a pat, though in Ireland I've been, nor am I a paddy, though Ireland I've seen. But I a paddy, that's nothing at all, for there's many's a bold hero from Edinburgh. Well, I know you're a pads by the cuts where you're here, but you're turned a Scotsman as soon as you're here. You left your own country for breaking the law, and we're seizing all stragglers from Edinburgh. And were I a pat and you knew it were true, or were I the devil, then what's that to you? Were it not for the stick that you hold in your paw, then I'd show you a game played in Edinburgh. And a lump of blackthorn that I held in my fist, around his big body I made it to twist, and the blood from his napper I quickly did draw, and paid him stocking and trust for Edinburgh. And the people came around like a flock of wild geese, saying, catch that daft rascal, he's killed the police. And for every friend I had, I'll swear he had twa. It was terrible hard times for Edinburgh. But I come to a wee boat that sails in the Forth, and I packed up my gear and I steered farther north. Farewell to old Ricky, your pole is north, and the devil gang where you says Edinburgh. So come all ye young people, wherever you're from, I don't give a damn to what place you belong. I come from Argyll and the Highlands of Bra, but I ne'er took it till being called Edinburgh.
The inimitable voice of Dick Gaughan there with Erin Gobra from the Harvard Tapes album. Hello, welcome to Travelling Folk on BBC Radio Scotland with me, Anna Massie. We aren't live tonight. Instead, we're bringing you a special programme all about Dick Gaughan's incredible life and music. Over the next 2 hours, we'll hear from Dick himself, as well as some of his contemporaries and those who have been influenced by him, including Corinne Polwart, Billy Bragg and Barbara Dixon. Back at the start of May, I was lucky enough to spend a very sunny afternoon interviewing Dick in the garden of his good friend Ian McCalman, just outside Edinburgh. It was a glorious afternoon. There was elderflower pressy, there were tea and biscuits, a golden retriever puppy, and a living legend and powerhouse singer-songwriter who has played a huge role in so much more than just the Scottish music scene. Dick Gaughan is truly a global icon of folk and protest song. We couldn't have had a better day, and it was a joy spending a couple of hours chatting to him. Dick, will you tell us a bit about your beginnings in music? What got you started playing and singing?
All my family were musicians, and my grandfather was on the Irish side was a fiddle player, and my father played fiddle, but guitar mainly.
Right.
He gave up the fiddle at the time the skiffle boom came along. He gave up the fiddle, took up the guitar, and then he ended up as a dance band guitar player. And he didn't teach me anything, but I learned from watching him, you know.
So did you never play with him?
Not very much.
No.
I mean, I was just a kid, you know. I was about 7 years old,
Okay.
you know. And I just kind of almost osmosis. It was just he would teach other people, and I'd watch him teaching people.
And did you want to learn from him?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But did he refuse to show you stuff? Or
No,
think?
it never occurred to him.
Right.
And it took him by surprise when I was actually able to play anything at all. He was quite stunned because he was trying to wind me up. He gave me a guitar, said, tune that.
And you did?
So I did. And then he started to take me a wee bit more seriously at that point.
And like, was it always folk stuff then? I guess he was playing the fiddle and the dance band stuff. You were hearing a load of different.
No,
music.
I started out playing in a Beatles lookalike band.
A lookalike band.
And
Which one were you?
I was nobody. I was the one that stood at the back and tried to look as if I could what was going on. But I was my big hero at that time was Chuck Berry. That set me off on that particular path, you know, into rock and roll and stuff.
Riding along in my automobile, my baby beside me at the wheel. I stole a kiss at the turn of a mile, my curiosity running wild, cruising and playing the radio, with no particular place to go. Riding along in my automobile, I was anxious to tell her the way I feel. So I told her softly and sincere, and she leaned and whispered in my ear, cuddling more and driving slow, with no particular place to go.
My father was into American folk song. Like, you know, I grew up listening to Woody Guthrie and Bill Brunsey and stuff like that, you know, because that was what my father was into.
So was that, a fairly political introduction then? If there was Guthrie and these kind of songs.
It was never overtly called political. It was just songs that you did. These were the songs that people sang and sang about people that were like us. You know, just ordinary working class people, you know. There was never any special deal made of it, you know. There was no, let's sing a song about this is political, so...
Yeah. Just singing what you know, I suppose, isn't it?
Sing what you know about.
Yeah.
And what we knew about was just being working class, you know, getting on with it. And my mother was a Gaelic singer. She was from Lochaber. So there was that as well as twin strands of things coming together, you know, like mother's Gaelic songs and our knowledge of that history.
And did you have any Gaelic growing up?
No, she wouldn't speak Gaelic to us at all because it was the language of poverty.
Okay.
Nobody in Leith spoke Gaelic. You know?
Really?
So
It would kind of betray your roots and
That's right.
your work. I guess very working class or very very poor roots.
Yeah.
Then,
my mother, if you spoke to her in English or you spoke to her in Gaelic, that was fine. But if you used Scots at all, she had a great contempt for the Scots language.
Did she? Why was that?
Because she grew up learning English in school. I mean, this is wartime, just after the war.
Yeah.
And there was not an awful lot of Gaelic spoken anywhere in Leith, so I never grew up with it. And my mother, she didn't speak Gaelic to us because she wanted us to learn English. And so I grew up being bilingual, you know. I spoke English to my mother and Scots to my father.
So would you get the belt in school if you spoke Scots? If you
Yes.
spoke the language of the streets, you would
Indeed.
probably get the strap
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, because it was, this is slang. You mustn't use slang. You must speak English. And it used to annoy me intensely.
Even then, as a kid, did you feel there was an injustice in that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you grow up with that kind of dichotomy of yourself split in half, you know, with one half speaking English and that half there speaking Scots.
And you're being told one is right and the other is
That's
wrong.
right. And the crazy thing about it was that the school I went to had to give a Burns Prize every year. And they wouldn't teach Burns because I went to Catholic school in Leith, so it was you had to avoid Burns because Burns was uncouth. And we had to recite Bonnie George Campbell. I remember it very well. And they would fall back on Scottish ballads, and you could do them. You had to learn them to recite them in school. And I grew up hating Bonnie George Campbell. That was a concession to speaking Scots. And if you spoke Scots at all, you were in trouble. You know, the likes of Donald McKay or Hugh McDermott was just never in the frame at all.
You were getting that kind of, I guess you were getting that education at home. You were getting the music and the culture.
Pretty much so.
At home from your folks.
And the history.
What did they do, your folks?
My father was a crane driver. He worked in the pit after the Second World War. He was in the Navy during the Second World War. Came out and worked in the pit at Newton Grange, just up the road from here. He was a train driver. And he drove little shunting engines at the pit. And he did that for a couple of years. And then he got a job in Leith itself, which was a bit better for him. So he ended up being a mechanic in agricultural machinery, which was the first job I ever had was in there. He got me a job when I was a 15-year-old kid. I didn't want to know about jobs or anything. I wasn't interested.
What was your goal then? What were you thinking?
Just to play guitar.
Really, at that young age, it was just you were daft for the guitar, and that's all you wanted to do. Like, did you think I'm going to go and have this be my job, or was it just that was the sort of only thing that you wanted to do was play?
I didn't think about it. Yeah. It was just there.
Just wanted to play.
I wanted to play it, and if I could make a living out of it, that would be great as well. But the idea of doing it as a job never occurred to me.
Until when? What was the turning point for you that made you think, all right, actually maybe this could be my job?
Well, I served my time as a paper maker.
A paper maker?
Yeah, and this area used to be full of paper mills, and I worked in John Galloway's paper mill in Balderno, and I served my time there. And just before I was finished, it was just a 3-year apprenticeship, and about 6 weeks before my finals, I said, "That's it. I've had enough of this."
Jacked it in before you finished?
Yeah, and I thought I'm going to be a musician. And the fellow who was responsible for the course in paper making, he said, "You're mad, you know." I said, "Really?" He said, "You'll never make a living as a musician. You know, here you could work your way up into a manager." And a paper mill, I thought, well, that's the last thing I want. So I jacked it in, and was getting gigs around Edinburgh, and the pubs like Ian and Barbara Dixon and people like that. And it was a good time to grow up. But
what kind of stuff were you playing? Was this the rock and roll?
Anything and everything. And by then I knew a few songs that would pass for traditional songs. But I sang everything and anything.
Were you playing in a band or were you playing solo?
No, I was on my own. And then I joined up with another two fellas that were there. And I mean, there was a whole bunch of us around at that time. There was Ian and McCalmans. There was Barbara Dixon, Rab Noakes, and all these people were around. And the people I kind of grew up with musically.
A lassie was milking her father's cow when a gentleman on horseback he come riding by. A gentleman on horseback he come riding by was the laird o' the dainty Doonby. Lassie, oh, what will ye gie if I was to lie next with thee? To lie next that'll never, never do, though you're laird o' the dainty Doonby. He's ta'en her by the middle sae small, and he's laid her doon where the grass grew lang. It was a lang, lang time ere he raised her up again, saying, "Your lady o' the dainty Doonby."
When I came to live in Edinburgh, I was 17, and I had a job in the daytime, but I used to go and meet people who were involved in the folk music scene from all over the place, and we would meet wherever everybody said we should meet. So that could have been Sandy Wells, or it could have been one or two of the folk clubs that were around at that time. It just was like a jungle telegraph. Everybody knew where everybody was meeting. Now, Dick was a member of that group, all I remember about him very, very early on was how prodigiously talented he was as a guitar player. Because, as Archie Fisher would say, he's one of the few people that I knew who could play up the dusty end. You're another one, Anna, actually. Yeah, you're one of the few as well, I know, who can play up the dusty end. But that's another story. He could, because his father was a jazz guitarist. And Dick could play the guitar very proficiently in that style. Now, cut to whenever it was, a couple of years later, and it was a totally different story because his love of the folk music of Scotland and Ireland, well, certainly these islands, was so profound that he developed a really fantastic guitar technique because he was deeply musical and his technique was astonishing. So much so that I don't think anybody could unpick it. Do you know what I mean? I once actually saw him with a fellow sitting next to me. I was in the front row with a pal of mine. And there was a guy sitting next to me who had binoculars looking at Dick's fingers. Now, I'd heard of people doing that before, but I couldn't believe my eyes, that he was a real geek. He was a Dick Gaughan, obviously, Dick Gaughan fanboy.
I think that's a thing still, isn't it? People still trying to work out what Dick's doing on the guitar.
Yes, exactly. Well, the thing is that even Dick doesn't know what he did on the guitar because it was so extraordinary. And also that he sang slightly out of tempo with the guitar, so the guitar and the voice were sort of pulled and ebbed and flowed with each other. And it was just a magical experience. I mean, you couldn't take it to bits and put it back together again. It was just him. And I have this theory that all the best singers sing from a point of them having some kind of either nervousness or some sort of pain, not physical pain, but, like some sort of emotional inadequacy, vulnerability, whatever you like. It's in him. And that's why his take on traditional music was always just absolutely on the money. I mean, I've heard many, many people sing many, many songs in my life, but Dick could really sing them and mean every word, which was almost like Jeannie Robertson did, You believed every word that Jeannie said, and actually you believed every word that Dick said. His choices of songs were consummate, but actually what he did with songs made them so special. And to my everlasting shame, when I saw him after a long, long gap, about sort of 20 years ago now, he said to me, "Do you remember when we were in the band together?" I didn't know what to say. I said, "I don't remember. I don't remember that." "What do you mean we were in the band together?" He said, "Oh, yes, you and me and Tom Smith, we were going to form a group." But he said, "We had a couple of goes at it and it never came to anything." And I said, "Oh, my goodness, how wonderful would that have been?" Tom Smith with his deep voice and Dick and myself. Yeah, we were thinking of doing that, but it didn't come to anything, sadly. But he is a one-off. If I say that to me he's the Scottish Martin Carthy, that is a great compliment from me, because I've always felt that Martin Carthy was utterly unique as well, utterly unique. Nobody like him. He just kind of knew what to do with the music, and it was much the same as Dick. Dick knew what to do with all those songs. He could interpret them without any of his arrangements ever getting in the way of the story and the job he had to do, which was to convey the song. And as talented as he was, he never actually got in the way of anything. I love him singing Rattlin', Roarin' Willie.
Is that the standout track, do you think? Would that be the sort of, if you had to pick one?
I think, yes. I think I'd like that. Or Erin Go Bra. He sort of breathed life into them, which he sort of gave them an identity, and still to this day, with listening, it's a thing of beauty. to listen to him. You know, there are musicians in your life, you just kind of scratch your head and you don't want to emulate it. You just want to stand back and say, isn't that great?
It's rattle and roar and Willie and he'll take the fare for to sell his fiddle and buy some other wear, but parting ways, fiddle the sort you flint to see. Rattle and roar and Willie, you'd welcome him to me. As I come by Clocalan, I can't leave kick it then and rattle and roar. And Willie was sitting at John Board End, I sitting at John Board End, a man good company. Rattle and roar, and Willie, you'd welcome him to me. It's Willie, come sell your fiddle, so fine. Willie, come sell your fiddle and buy a pint of wine. When I to sell my fiddle, the world would think I was mad. Money's the rattle and time, the fiddle and I.
Did you feel at that time that you were in the midst of something special, that you guys were at the vanguard or something? Or was it, like you say, it's just like your pals that were playing around the same time?
It's just something you did, you know. And if you could get a gig at £2 for a 2-hour gig in the Waverley Bar, then you did it. You know? And that's where we all kind of started our apprenticeship in there. And there was 3 pubs, all within very close walking distance. And right at the foot of the Cannon Gate, the top of the Cannon Gate, and the turn off to St Mary's Street, where the traffic lights are, at an elbow, there was the Waverley Bar, and round the corner from there on the Cannon Gate itself was the White Horse, and then down at the foot of St Mary's Street there was a pub called the Holyrood Bar. And,
That's still there now.
The Holyrood is still there, but it's nothing like it, the way it was when I was there. But these were the kind of mecca for singers and musicians, and the pay in them was dreadful. I mean, the best pay of the lot was the White Horse. Then after that was the Waverley, and then the Holyrood Bar at the bottom. And the Holyrood Bar, that whole Edinburgh area around there was called Dummy-Dykes, and that was an Irish, rock solid Irish community. And if you, to this day, if you go by the Waverley Bar, I can't remember what colour it's painted now, but it used to be painted green. And it was a hell of a pub. You didn't go in there unless you were Irish or sang. And you learn very quickly the trick of throwing the guitar into the case when a fight broke out.
Oh, really?
Yes. And
Leg
you
it.
learn how to leg it out of there as fast as you could.
So it's pretty rough going, but these kind of, like, these were, I suppose anybody that knows that part of Edinburgh now, it's tourist central, it's student central, it's a pretty gentrified.
Yes.
I mean, you'd still see a wee bit of action probably on a rowdy night, but it sounds like that was a pretty kind of boisterous, a rough wee triangle, was it?
Yeah, you learned your trade.
You cut your teeth on that, right enough.
Yes.
So from playing pubs around Edinburgh, how did you get from that to touring and recording?
Her Majesty's government sent me off on a thing that in those days they called work opportunities, apprenticeships. And they decided that I would be a plumber. And they sent me off from Edinburgh to Plymouth, right down the other end of the island, to study to be a plumber. I got down there, the first week I was down there, I found the folk club. in Plymouth and became a resident because I got on great with the people that ran it. But the idea of doing gigs as such was kind of remote to me. Although I'd done a few gigs up here, places like Dunfermline, St Andrews, places like that. In those days, people from Edinburgh didn't get gigs in Glasgow.
Oh, really?
No, Glasgow was the home of the blues.
Really? Not a folk scene. It was a totally different music scene there.
It was people like Billy Connolly and Jerry Rafferty that came out of all that lot in Glasgow. Great players, you know, and it was just a different ambience about it.
I walk along the street and wonder what to do. I'd like to ease the pain in my troubled brain, but as to how, I have no clue. Should I shout at the people who pass me by? Hey folks, look at me, I'm no ordinary guy. I had a love and she swore she was mine, but she only loved me when the weather was fine. My mind tells me what to do. Keep it to yourself, tell nobody else. Just how you love me so, they don't wanna know. Keep it to yourself.
I occasionally used to go into Glasgow to the Scotia Bar and go in there and spot people. But I didn't know anybody, you know, because I came from the east.
It's a world apart.
It was a totally different world.
So did you complete the apprenticeship at the plumbing?
Yes. And I came back up to Edinburgh, and Ian McAlman and the McAlmans were doing a programme called My Kind of Folk. And it was a programme, they were the hosts on the programme, and also they had to have guests on the programme. So they had Barbara Dixon and myself as their guests on the programme. And I thought, this is it, I'm on the radio now.
Made it.
I'll just wait for the gigs to roll on. And of course they never did. So I just carried on singing.
What kind of time are we talking about? What kind of era?
That was 69. And in fact, it was summer of 1969 that we did that, My Kind of Folk programme. And shortly after that, a few months after that, I was involved in running a wee folk club in Edinburgh. And one of the people that we booked there was an English singer called Robin Dransfield. And Robin just stayed at our flat when I lived in Forest Road. And Robin and I kind of hit it off and became mates. And he said, you want to come to London? And the idea of jumping on a train or a bus and going to London was not quite as bizarre then as it would be now. And because everybody went to London eventually.
Really?
And,
all roads lead to London?
That's right, because there was no work anywhere else, so I went to London.
What, musically, do you mean there was no work anywhere
Yeah.
else, or just in general?
Yes, and it was very difficult to break into any kind of touring in England.
So was it the sort of thing that, I guess you hear about it a lot, that people will go to London and they'll go and play all these open mic things and, you know, just waiting for somebody the right person to see them and discover them. Is it the same kind of thing then?
Not quite. Robin and his brother Barry had made a record called They're Out of the Blues, which was all, in spite of the title, it was all traditional English songs. And it was a kind of a sensation in its way. It was they were the big stars of the English folk world.
As I crossed over Salisbury Plain, what a dainty fine sight I behold, as lasses were crying and tearing there. Oh, the rouse has just come for the blues. Oh, the rouse has just come for the blues. Then each one on to
And
their mother's
Robin was very close to Bill Leader, who ran Triller Records, and he insisted that Bill make a record to me, and I went in and sang a couple of songs for Bill, and he went, okay, do it then, and I made an album. And that was 1970 to 71, can't remember the exact date, but it was in there, and that was my break into doing things. You know, I got a few gigs as a result, mainly thanks, strangely enough, to Hamish Imlach, who I met up with in a pub in London, and I said, I recognised him from having been up, you know, Hamish had played in Edinburgh quite a lot of times, and He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just down here and singing around wherever I can get. He said, right, okay, I'm doing a tour here. Come with me on the gigs. And you do a full spot in each of the gigs that we're playing, and you can get tickets from gigs that way. And it worked, because I survived the excesses of Hamish's life and avoided getting too heavily drawn into the whole imbibing culture of various drugs and stuff. And so I went round and Hamish introduced me to the club organisers and said, this is Dick, you've got to give him a song. So I'd go in, borrow Hamish's guitar and do a few songs, and they'd say, okay, you can get a gig. And I did quite a few gigs that way, and so I was very grateful to Hamish for that.
Well, he went into a pub and he come out paralytic. Oh, VP and cider, what a hell of a mixture. God never the oil and the orange juice. Sex rears its ugly head now. Does this bus go to the Denniston Pally? Oh, I'm looking for a lumber. Glory, hallelujah. God never the oil and the orange juice.
Nobody had any pretentious ambitions about being big stars or any of that stuff. It was just, if you got enough to pay the rent and do the songs, and the reception wasn't too bad, then you do it,
right.
You know. And it was a completely different world then. I mean, I doubt very much whether I would actually survive long enough to stay alive through the way it is these days.
Really?
Because the negative aspects of the so-called music industry has always been an anathema to me. You know, I've always hated it, and the idea of having to, it dominates everything these days. That it doesn't matter whether it's music or anything else. This idea that you have to be, quote, successful, and success means you've got to make money. So I had no interest in money at all, you know.
Okay. What does success mean to you then? How would you qualify it?
Well, at that time or now?
Well, both. Has that changed over the years?
No, not really. People in my generation grew up listening to people like Rudy Guthrie and all that. That was our, if you were like, our role models. And people like Daryl Adams, Jack Elliott, and in Scotland, Alex Campbell, Hamish Imlach, people like that. And they were all fairly hard-living people, you know. There was like, if you couldn't drink, you were in the wrong company there.
Okay.
You know? But there were, I mean, Alex Campbell served his time on the streets, singing, busking in Paris and Copenhagen. And to people like me, we're coming along behind them and learned as much as we possibly could from them. And we especially learned how to survive an audience. And I was down there for a year, and then I got a phone call from young Ali Bain saying, do you want to join the Boys of the Loch? Now, Ali and I had done a few gigs together before he met up with Mike Willans, who then became one of the original four of the Boys of the Loch. And Mick decided to bail out and go and live in Denmark. Ali played on the album that I did at that point, which was a record called No More Forever. And Ali played a bit of fiddle on that. And that's why Ali I knew already because we'd done gigs up here. And then I got this phone call from him about May that year, 71, 72, saying, you know, do you want to join the Boys of the Loch? So I said, aye, why not? It was that time, you know, somebody said something like, do you want to join the band? He said, yes, thank you.
Oh, Johnny, my man, do you know think arising? For the day as we spend and the next coming on. The cellars are dim and the jewel stoop is empty. Oh, rise up, my Johnny, and come away. The bairnies at home, they are all and greeting. They meal in the barrel to fill the wee wines. While you sit here drinking, you leave us lamenting. Oh, rise up, my Johnny, and come away. Was that at the door that's a speaking so kindly? It's the voice of my wee wifey, Maggie by name. Come in, my dear lassie, and sit down beside me. So rise up, my Johnny, and come away. Oh, Johnny, my man, do you know mind the Colton? Alehouse or tavern, and ran mines. We spent the long days by the sweet scent of roses, and never thought upon gone away. Oh, will dear mind, oh, these times that you speak, oh, but these days they are gone and will ne'er come again. But as for the present, we will try for to mend it. So geese your hand, Maggie, and I'll away. There's Johnny Rose, and he banged the door open, saying, cursed be the tavern that's ever let me in, and cursed be the whiskey that made me I'm thirsty, and fare thee weel whiskey, for I'm away.
Within a couple of months, I was in this position, we're doing touring the States, touring Ireland, you know, and I'm thinking, this is great, all this stuff, France, touring France. And at that point, I decided very quickly that I didn't like being on the road. I didn't like flying in particular. I hated flying.
Right.
And so I left the Boys of the Loch after a year and went solo again. I formed a very short-lived band with a fella called Chuck Fleming, a great fiddle player from up here, in fact from Lone Heath, and an Irish fella called Tom Hickleton. Tom was one of the people that you just had a habit of moving in on you. So I was living in a flat in London at the time, a bunch of other people, and Tom decided to move in without any discussion.
Oh, really? That's me just in. That's
right.
me in the flat
That's
now.
right. That's right. He was just there, and they had this band that they called Spencer's Feet, and they were just changing their name and came up with the title Five Hand Reel. And also in that band was Bobby Edelson, who was from Coatbrig. And Bobby and I had known each other for years, again, from around the pubs and everything, saying, and we played together a couple of times. And they asked me to join at that point, and I said no, because I just had fresh in my mind was all the experience of being on the road, and I thought, I don't want that.
Well, it must have been quite heavy duty touring, was it? Like, were you away for big long tours?
Yeah, a couple of months.
That's hard. That's hard being away from home. It's physically exhausting being away for that long.
Especially for a laddie for Leith, you know. I was suddenly finding myself in the USA, you know, like
Was that an exciting thing to go and tour the States?
Not really.
No?
It was exciting meeting people and getting to play with a completely different audience.
Were there a hostile audience in the States? No.
No, far from it. So the places that we played, we had a great time with. It was still that whole thing about being away from home and being away for 2 months, you know. And eventually, after a year of being invited to join 500 Reel, Chuck Fleming left and they were needing somebody else to make up the 5. And Bobby and I knew each other well. So then at that point I said, why not? And it was a full scale these days, which was common as muck, but at that time it was quite revolutionary. It was a full scale electric band. And I'd always fancied getting into a band and playing electric again. So I joined 500 Reel in 75, I think, and made another solo record first. And then with 500 Reel we made 3 albums. And then my daughter got knocked down by a car, which gave me the horrors, because I was away on tour at the time. And it's everybody's nightmare, you know, when your kid's getting something like that happening.
Well, I guess it's a nightmare scenario for anybody, but then when you're away from home, were you able to get back quickly, or did you?
No, I just jumped everything and went straight home.
Yeah.
And I decided to leave the band then. Then I did a couple of tours, usually with other people. And in 1979, the Thatcher government got elected, and I thought, I've got to take part in this. I've got to, for one of a better expression, I've got to join the fight here. So I made a record called Handful of Earth, which seemed to gel with people and how they were thinking. And I thought, that album is the best I can do. You know, I can't do it any better than that. So it's the best I'm capable of. Somebody else can do anything like with it, but that's me. I've done what I can.
Being in spring, and the small birds they were singing down by a shiny harbour, a carelessly did stray, where the thrushes they were warbling, the violets were charming. For the view two lovers talking, while I did delay. She said, my dear, don't leave me all for another season. Though fortune may be pleased, and I'll go along with you. I'll forsake friends and relations, and quit this Irish nation, and to the bonny banks forever I'll bid adieu. He said, my dear, don't grieve me, or yet annoy my patience. You know I love you dearly, although I'm going away. I'm going to some foreign nation to purchase a plantation, for to comfort us hereafter, all in America. lords and their regents, their bailiffs and their beagles, the land of our forefathers, we're forced for to give o'er, for we're sailing on the ocean for honour and promotion, and we're parting with our sweethearts. It's them we do adore. If you were in your bed lying and thinking on dying, one side to the bonny banks, your sorrows you'd give o'er. And if you were but 1 hour all in her shady bower, pleasure would surround you, you'd think on death no more. So fare thee well, sweet Craigie Hill, where oftentimes I rode, and I never thought in my childhood days I'd part you anymore, for we're sailing on the ocean for honour and promotion, and the bonny boats a-sailing way down by Durham shore.
Craigie Hill from Dick Gaughan's iconic Handful of Earth, which is the choice of my guest, Karine Polwart. Karine, why Craigie Hill?
I remember exactly when I heard it for the first time. I was living in a wee bedsit flat near the river in Dundee, and I was being courted at the time by a big lanky lad called Dougie Rutherford, and he had previously dropped 2 mixtapes through my door, which were the first time that I ever heard Dick singing. But it was the night before my grandfather's funeral, and a tape copy of Handful of Earth came through my door with a wee note from Dougie, and I played it that night before heading down to Ayr for my grandpa Peter's funeral. And the track Craigie Hill absolutely floored me, because well, he lived in the part of Ayr that's called Craigie. Apart from anything else, he lived on a street called Hay Hill in Craigie and Ayr, and his name was Peter Quinn, from a family that had come from Donegal. And Craigie Hill mentions Donegal, you know, it's an Irish emigrant song. So there was something about the landing of it on my doormat that honestly just felt like it was like a song for my grandpa. So I always think about my grandpa when I hear it. I just think it's the most beautiful singing and arrangement of a song. Just like, yeah, off the charts beautiful. One of my keepers for my whole life, I would say.
So that was your introduction to Dick Gaughan, mixtapes from Dougie Rutherford. And has he, I guess, was that the start of a sort of a love for Dick's music then? Has he gone on to be a big influence on you?
Oh, a massive influence. I mean, I'd never heard anybody singing Scottish traditional songs like Dick, Scottish and Irish traditional songs. And it was shortly after that, it was the very first Celtic Connections. I moved from Dundee to Glasgow. And that opening year, Dick was playing as part of Celtic Connections on a double header with Sheilas, Patsy Seddon and Mary McMaster. And I bought a ticket for that gig. And that was the first time I got to see him live. And then I got a real sense of his person, not just his music, but, you know, his politics and his ethics. And yeah, just blew me away. And actually just had a really massive influence on me ever since then. So musically, you know, I can't play the guitar like Dick Gaughan. You can.
I
can't.
No.
But there's something about the way he inhabits a song that is just incredible to me. Yeah, and it's the through line of integrity about it all. And he's just been really kind over the years. I was involved in a big orchestral project that he put on at Celtic Connections shortly after giving up my day job and becoming a musician. I was also at the pivot point of becoming a musician, actually. I worked for Stonyport Agency and I was booking gigs for Dick Gaughan and Michael Mara.
Whoa.
And which is like, yeah, I could not believe it. I mean, they were my two musical heroes at the time in terms of Scottish music, and I was helping to get them gigs. So there's something about the wee journey into making music that's bound up with Dick. And yeah, and just he's been kind with his time. You know, he's offered me some really pivotal advice at moments where I've been unsure what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, and he's been kind enough to, you know, meet for a cup of coffee. So I can't speak highly enough of him really as a person, as a musician.
When did you first perform with him, or first meet him, if that wasn't in a gig context?
Oh, I do. I mean, I remember that too. I was playing in a duo with Jill Bowman called Michaelius, and I might just have left my job, or perhaps not even quite, but I was playing at a show called The Floors at Edinburgh. It was part of the Edinburgh Folk Festival. It was maybe 1999, actually. I think I was still in a full-time job at that point. And I sang a song with Jill. It was Fine Floors in the Valley, about Bonnie at Morn. It was a song. Anyway, I came off the stage and Dick was next up. And he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Who are you?" And I remember just being like, oh my goodness, like Dick Gaughan has just spoken to me. And the world can just like eat me up right now. Yeah, so yeah, I remember. I mean, it's funny, there are really like proper strong moments in my life where I remember meeting Dick and just it being a really, really big deal.
Singer-songwriter Corrine Polwart there on the influence that Dick Gaughan has had on her. Stay with us here on BBC Radio Scotland's Travelling Folk as we hear lots more about Dick's life and music after the news. I found out about the project to republish his back catalogue and chat to many more musicians who've been influenced by him, including Chris Streever and Siobhan Miller.
Radio Scotland.
Home of Good Morning Scotland.
Listen when you wake up for the latest news. On digital radio.
BBC Sounds.
And your smart speaker.
Play BBC Radio Scotland. at 9 o'clock with Craig McMurran. A man has been charged.
Radio Scotland.
I come like a comet newborn, like the sun that arises at morning. I come like the furious tempest that follows the thundercloud's warning. I come like the fiery lava from cloud-covered mountains volcanic. I come like a storm from the north that the oceans awake to in panic. I come because tyranny planted my seed in the hot desert sand. I come because masters have kindled my fury with every command. I come because man cannot murder the life-giving seed in his veins. I come because liberty cannot forever be fettered by chains. I come because tyrants imagine that mankind is only their throne. I come because peace has been nourished by bullets and cannon alone. I come because one world is two and we face one another with rage. I come because guards have been posted to keep out the hope of the age.
Welcome back to Travelling Folk on BBC Radio Scotland with me, Anna Massie. That was Revolution by Dick Gaughan, a remastered version of a recording made in New York in November 1983. We'll hear more about the work to bring Dick's back catalogue back to life very shortly. Now, we're not live tonight. Instead, we've got a special programme all about the life and music of Dick Gaughan. Before the news, we heard Dick talking about his 1981 album, A Handful of Earth. Here, he picks up on what followed that.
I got involved in running a studio in Northumberland and came to the conclusion that what I needed was I was restless because I needed a band. I kept thinking, I didn't want to front a band, I just wanted to be, if you like, part of the background.
It's a very different mentality, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
I want to have a band,
yeah,
or I want to be in a band.
Yes.
It's quite a different thing.
Yeah.
And there's the joy of being part of something.
Absolutely.
Like that.
Yes. And I had no desire, as I say, I had no desire to front it or to be the big star or anything. You know, just I like the idea of a band. And I remember one night doing a gig along with Patsy Seddon and Mary McMaster and Davy Steele, who at that point was getting married to Patsy. And we were playing somewhere in Northumberland, I think it was. And I'd been on, and Patsy and Mary went on, just the two of them playing harps and singing. And I had this vision of a band built around these harps. And I liked working with Dave Tulloch on drums. And I'd also worked a bit with Mike Travis, who had been with Wildcat and was a superb jazz drummer. So I thought, those four are the basis of an ensemble. And myself and Davy Steele as well. What we need is another frontline musician. So we got Brian McNeilan, who'd been with the Battlefield. So Brian and the Piper. So that was the size of the band. And the fellow that had been the Piper at that point was Gary West, who was part of the original band. We called it Clan Alpha, Children of Scotland.
Heb een snakke sloven, heb een kraan of gevoel van je. Heb een tusjes en gambion van je. Ik een kamer of vrienden van jazz. Laat toe je stof, kijk eens fan. Kan een morgens maar leid. Ik kan je komen geschier. Dus een beetje jou kan een fan. Ik kan je komen geschier. Dus een beetje jou kan een fan. Nur hier vervelen ze lang. But he jogger gan ligger kind. Nur de spin at a river so now. Not je gan de kan de gail. Så gail te grill on sound. Steve Vagers is Carlos Juinch. He cooking he conquered geschier. Cause a place in young Canada and fame. He cooking he conquered geschier. Cause a place in young Canada and fame.
We moved into the studio for 10 days and just literally did nothing but play for 10 days. Because it was in the middle of nowhere. You know, there was no shops, there was no distractions of any kind. We just played. And I loved every second of it, you know.
Was that you writing stuff and recording, or you'd
No,
already rehearsed it and you were ready
because
to go?
Davy and Brian McNeil both wrote songs. And I wrote a few tunes and things to stitch it all together. And I loved it. I thought it was superb. And the release of the album was a disaster. And again, it's too long a story to go into here. But that was me back solo again. And that's the story up until 2016, where I had a stroke. And that put me out of action. So I've no fine motor control in my hands. So I can't play anymore.
What a loss that must be. Having spent your life playing.
Yeah, if anybody asked me before that, what do you do for it? What are you? Who are you? I'd say I'm a guitar player. You know, that's what I do. And I just come to terms with the fact that maybe that wasn't true. Maybe that there had to be something else other than being a guitar player. So I did a few productions for other people. And but the heart had gone out of it. It's a strange thing to say, but the bottom had fallen out of the world because I couldn't play anymore. So what do I do now? And just got on with the rest of my life.
Do you still write music?
No, I haven't written in 10 years anyway. And whatever I was going to do, whatever I was going to do in terms of making a contribution to guitar playing and music, pre-2016, I did it. Nothing since then. Because whatever I was going to say doing all that, I did up until that point. And there was nothing left in that. Which is, in some ways, I feel deprived looking at it now.
That's understandable.
And that brings us up to the present, because Colin Harper got in touch and says, and I'd met Colin a few times in Belfast playing over there, and I didn't really know each other very well, but he then said, how about doing a box set, because all this stuff of yours is just unavailable. Certainly did appeal to me. I thought it's got to be out there anyway, you know, let people hear it. I did this, devoted 30 years of my life in doing this stuff, and it's not available, and nobody gets to hear it. You make all that music, and it's no good unless somebody's listening to it.
That's what it's for.
That's what
it's for sharing, isn't it?
Yes, and if people aren't getting to listen to it, then what was the point? So I was delighted when Colin suggested doing it.
Well, I'm Colin Harper. I'm an author of books about music history and I suppose an archivist, a consultant to record labels who deal in the past. Last year, just chatting with Robin Dransfield, the great English folk singer, long retired, but a great champion of Dick Gaughan, then and now, he mentioned Dick, and it just occurred to me, why don't we hear much about Dick Gaughan these days, you know? And I first saw Dick in Belfast in 1988 in Queen's University Student Union, and it's still vivid in my mind. I mean, he was a complete titan, a colossus on stage, a man of astonishing charisma, astonishing virtuosity, very witty, very powerful, huge integrity and charisma, and a lot of compassion, and it really stays with you, that kind of stuff. And I saw him many times after that, up until the early 2000s. Then, you know, life took a bit of a twist, and I sort of lost touch with what he was doing. I was aware that he had had a stroke and retired in 2016. But as I say, last year I thought, why don't we hear more about him? Why is there not more archive issues? Why has he left the conversation, as it were? Now, obviously, he hasn't left the conversation among, you know, diehard Scottish traditional music, folk music fans. The cognoscenti know, but I thought, you know, this man was a giant. And I don't mean just a giant of folk music. I mean, one of the all-time greats of what you might call the rock era, the last half of the 20th century. I asked a few record labels that I deal with, would you be interested in a box set? I created one on paper. I knew the material was there, but I couldn't get anyone interested. They said, no, we don't think there's a market for Dick Gaughan. And I kind of thought, well, I don't believe that. And basically fast forward a few months, and in March, April 2025, I crossed my fingers, took a deep breath, and ran a crowdfunder to crowdfund a 8-disc box set. And amazingly, within a month we raised 92,000. I was able to give Dick Gaughan a huge sum of money to help with his cost of living, and the rest is I was able to put into not only the box set but a number of associated releases. So it started a bit of a mini industry, but it feels like the right thing to do.
It is an amazing collection of music here that we're looking at. This 8-disc retrospective, and Dick says himself that there's stuff on there that he didn't even know about or remember. That's incredible.
It is. The thing I find with... I speak to Dick often, and the thing I find with him is that I'll find, I'll unearth a track or a recording, a song from some live performance, 50 years ago, and he'll say, I have no recollection of singing that, but he'll say, but I remember where I heard it, and he'll tell you that he heard it off this or that floor singer in Scunthorpe in 1973, and so he will remember where he heard songs, but he'll forget that he performed them sometimes. The Revolution box set covers his first 15 years, which is the period in which he was most active in traditional music, both tunes and songs. And after that, if you like, that was the second phase of his career, when he became more involved in political material or songs about the here and now, and indeed songwriting himself. So 2 distinct phases, and the box set covers the first. And I think from about 126 audio tracks, 83 unreleased, plus 38 filmed performances from around Europe, 2.5 hours of film from his first film performance, which was amazingly filmed in a room above Sandy Bell's pub in Edinburgh by Danish television in 1970, to a BBC performance from Celtic Connections in 2012, backed by Solus, singing Erin Go Bragh. So Fiddler's Green to Erin Go Bragh. Across 42 years. When Dick was performing actively, he was always around. So I suppose when somebody's accessible and always around and not hard to see in concert, you get used to them just being there, and to an extent you take them for granted. Whereas 10 years on from his retirement, you think, hell, this man was a genius. And you think, my goodness, we've got to preserve and celebrate this. But to Dick himself, I think he is most pleased that his music will be heard again, because I think there was a sense of sorrow that his music had kind of slipped below the radar a little bit, and that has been rectified.
Colin, we're going to hear one of these tracks. Tell us about Bonnie Lass Among the Heather.
Oh, well, this is one of many BBC recordings that survived. Not necessarily all at the BBC, but I was able to find some in various places. And Bonnie Lass Among the Heather was recorded for a programme called Folk 79 in, as it says in the tin, 1979. And it's a track that he recorded in the 70s on one of his albums, but this performance is just so compelling. And to have the bravery, when you've got a 20-minute slot on the BBC, to sing a 5-minute unaccompanied song. But I mean, that's just one aspect of the man's genius.
It was down in yonder lonely place where first I spied my roving fancy. She was gathering sleighs on yonder braes when first I spied my lovely Nancy. And wow, but she was wondrous fair, and the features, they were wondrous bonny, and she said her father was frae him, and she's gathering her feathers, yours together. Her gown was so neatly trimmed, and the collar of it was green and yellow, and in between the strips were seen were the bells of the bonny blue you be my bride, my bonny, bonny lass? Will you be my bride and leave the hand that far and silk and satin she may gang? If you be my bride and leave the land. Oh, kind sir, your offer's fair, but I fear that it's meant and laughter for some rich squire's son you might have been, while I'm but a poor shepherd's daughter. But had you been a plough-boy lad, a ploughing in the morning early, if a plough-boy lad you might have been, then by all my heart I would love thee. And I've travelled east and I've travelled west, and I've travelled over muir and mountain, but the bonniest lass that e'er I spied, she was gathering her feathers, the owls together.
Hello, I'm Chris Drever. I'm a singer and songwriter and guitar player from the Orkney Islands. Dick Gaughan's a painter, he's an artist, and he's the greatest at being Dick Gaughan, at playing the guitar in that way. And it's quite expressive, I guess. You know, it's a lot of playing with time, but really rapid, dexterous movements. But it's like he creates these blurs of harmony that accentuate what he's delivering lyrically. It's all part of one thing, his guitar playing and his delivery of song, you know. It's all built up to be this one complete thing.
Maybe it's hard to quantify, maybe it's difficult to answer, maybe it's not, maybe you have the words for it. How important do you think Dick Gaughan is to the Scottish folk scene?
Well, I don't know if I can speak for the folk scene. I can speak for myself and what I think he's done. To me, he validated a lot of stuff that could have been tartan, shortbread tin nonsense. He's a real voice, given the material that he sang, especially the traditional material when I was a kid, real gravitas and a sense that it was real. It was real people and real events and real feelings, and it really mattered. And, you know, such a sophisticated man from a modern day Scotland dealing with that material just blew my mind. Anyone that enjoys my music, whether they like it or not, is getting a good dose of Gaughan by proxy. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's true of endless numbers of people. If I'm speaking to another musician, and they can be from anywhere, I know, you know, people, American musicians or Canadian musicians, Australians. If you mention Gaughan, the amount of people whose eyes light up. Mm. And you can always tell from the reaction whether or not they're worth hanging about with.
Chris, is there a track you could pick as a favourite, a standout?
I was thinking about this, and the answer is absolutely not. You know, I guess, you know, the Handful of Earth is like it's the go-to, it's the benchmark, it's the one that everybody remembers straight away. But there are loads of other great songs on a whole load of other records. One that stands out for me, partly I think just because it was stuck in my head when I was a kid, because it's such an unusual thing, was Stand Up for Judas.
The Romans were the masters when Jesus walked the land. In Judea and in Galilee they ruled with an iron hand. And the poor were sick with hunger, and the rich were clothed in splendour, and the rebels whipped and crucified, hung rotting as a warning. And Jesus knew the answer, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, said love your enemies. But Judas was a zealot and he wanted to be free. Resist, he said, the Romans' tyranny.
I wonder about your material, and a lot of people would know your music as really sort of a lot of political, a lot of activism, obviously like songs of protest and workers' rights, these kind of things. Was that always there for you? You mentioned the Thatcher government. Did you feel there was a real kind of turn in your material there, or has it always been something that was important to you?
Well, there was never any distinction. You know, never ever sat down and thought, I'll do this song because it's political, or I'll do that song because it's not. In those days, it was everybody did songs that were about contemporary issues. I mean, it was in the tail end of the Glasgow Eskimos, you know, the whole anti-nuclear period in the Glade. That was in the late 60s.
The Glasgow Eskimos?
Aye.
I don't know about that.
Hello, hello, we are the Eskimos. There was an album made at the time called Ding Dong Dollar, which had the Glasgow Eskimos on it, because somebody had made a comment about the protesters on the anti-fast lane nuclear protest, and some of the people who took part in it got in Eskimos kayaks and paddled up to the Holy Loch, and there was this huge thing about it, and they were known as the Glasgow Eskimos. It was mostly left-wing politics and mostly pro-independence politics as well. You know, so the rise of the SNP and the whole anti-nuclear thing went together at that period in the mid-60s. And I was just a kid then, you know, so I missed out on that particular period. But I came in right at the tail end of it, you know. There was a need for songs at that time which articulated people's opinions of what was going on. Woody Guthrie understood this, Pete Seeger understood it, Phil Oakes, a lot of those people understood that it's not enough to sing a song about people. You've got to understand who those people are, why you want to say to them, this is what you do about this. You know, and it sounds a bit pompous, really, for a musician to say, well, you've got to understand to tell people what they should do about it. But I don't think so, you know. You have to actually, in some way or another, touch the body politic if you're writing a song about something. It's not enough to write about issues, to write about this is terrible, you know, like I was saying, to write a song saying that the Tories are dreadful. Yeah, we all know the Tories are dreadful, but what do we do about it? And how do we get through to people? You know, and if there is a function for people like me, is to make people feel why you're saying that. You know, people don't respond that much to intellectual argument. They respond to how they're feeling. And if people don't feel that something is wrong and needs changing, then they won't do it.
In 1649, to St George's Hill, a ragged band they called the Diggers came to show the people's will. They defied the landlords, they defied the laws. They were the dispossessed, reclaiming what was theirs.
I'm Billy Bragg, and I'm a singer-songwriter activist from Essex.
Billy, when did you first hear Dick Gaughan's music?
I think it must be during the miners' strike. I mean, I'd already been aware of traditional folk music, but I generally was following the topic labels, artists, you know, so Shirley Collins, the Watersons, A.L. Lloyd, and I don't think I'd heard Handful of Earth, but at some point during the miners' strike, I came into contact with that record, and I found it, I mean, it was so timely, it fit exactly into what I was going through at the time and what was happening in the country. It was instrumental in reminding me that folk music is far more radical than pop music. I was able to go up into the coalfields in the north of England and do benefit gigs there rather than doing them in the cities and raising money and sending it. And I would get up there and I would find that there were traditional folk singers, people like Jock Purdon, who were there, and their songs were more radical than mine because they were part of a tradition of labour songs that stretched back into the 19th century. I mean, as I say, I'd been a folk fan before, but obviously with punk rock, all those albums had gone off to Oxfam. So the Miners' Strike kind of fired up my interest in folk music again, and Dick became the prime example of that, the person that I most cleaved to, because he seemed to be talking exactly the kind of language that I was trying to connect with. Dick had a huge influence on me. He, through his connections, he got me into East Germany, to do shows in East Germany, and through the whole of Eastern Europe. It was a Dick Gaughan gig where someone came up to me while I was taking a leak in the urinal and whispered in my ear, "Billy, have you ever been to East Germany?" And I thought, I'm going to be recruited for the Stasi here. This is going to be... But it was a Scots friend of Dick who taught at Humboldt University.
What a proposition.
It was really strange. It was really one of those quiet moments. But so, yeah, Dick has had a huge influence on all that. The more I was thinking about talking to you today, I realised and of course he performed on one of my albums. He performed on the Internationale with me, and also was one of the people who I went to and said, do you reckon I can get away with rewriting the Internationale? Because I respected him so much in his politics, and he was very, very supportive. He wasn't one of these people who say, "Oh no, you can't touch tradition," blah blah. He was incredibly supportive, and he always was supportive. But when the Miners' Strike happened, I didn't really know a huge amount about socialism, Marxism. The language that people were using was confusing to me. But Dick was really helpful in encouraging me to engage with what was going on and helping me to form my opinions. So, yeah, I owe him a great deal.
Is there a song of Dick's that particularly stands out for you as a favourite or as the most powerful or moving?
Well, Dick has some very powerful songs, and I'm a fan of all of them. But the most moving of his songs is a beautiful cover of Ewan MacColl's song School Days End, which is on an album he did for the Scottish Trade Union Congress, I think. I think it's called True and Bold. And it's really hard to find. Apparently, I have a copy. But I was talking to the people who are currently working to reissue Dick's catalogue, and I mentioned this particular track, and they were like, "Oh, what album's that then?" So obviously it's quite an obscure album, and in many ways it's kind of summed up to me my connection with Dick, because it's a song about young men going down the pit. So it comes from that period, that incredibly convulsive, confrontational period in 1984, 1985, when our country was involved in a genuine class war. And I think Dick and I both responded to that in the way that musicians should, by trying to engage with the forces that were attacking the working class and try and make music that galvanised people in solidarity. But School Days End really is not one of those frontline songs. It's a much more personal song. And the way Dick sings it, it's almost a lament. And I think anyone who's ever been down a pit, and I've been down just as an observer, would understand why a song for lads starting a life working underground in a mine would be best sung as a lament.
School days over. Come on then, John. Time you was getting your pit boots on with your sark and moleskin trousers. Time you was on your way. Time you were learning the collier's job and earning the collier's pay. Come on then, Jim, it's time to go. Time you were working down below. Time to be handling a pick and shovel. You start at the pit today. Time you were learning the pitman's job and earning a pitman's pay. Come on then, die. It's almost light. Time you were off to the anthracite. The morning mist is on the valley. Time you were on your way. Time you were learning the miner's job and earning a miner's pay. your sark and moleskin trousers. Time you was on your way. Time you were learning the collier's job and earning a collier's pay.
When the strike broke out in 1984, I thought, this is the big one. I can feel it coming. I had a lot of understanding of coal mines, and especially in this area here. Jesus, there was coal mines everywhere. And by that stage, there was 2 pits left. There was Monkton Hall over at Portobello, and there was Bilson Glen just up the road there. So you cannot be in this area living and not understand coal mining, not understanding what miners mean to the communities. Because an awful lot of the people around this area will still have been in the pit and will have understood coal mining. So I suppose the album and the songs on it arose from that strike, just from a desire to take part in some way or another to contribute something to what was going on. Thinking they need songs to sing, you know, they need people need songs to sing, they need songs to give them courage, they need songs just even if nothing else to entertain them. And a declaration of solidarity to say, look, I'm with you, you know. For that year of the strike, I was the chair of the Leith Miner Support Group. So there was that thing. I cannot comment in song unless I'm understanding from direct connection what the struggle is about. You know, so the collections of money and food and all that was very important. Not just in terms of taking this money out and food out and giving it to the Miner Support Group, but also from understanding what it felt like, what the people involved in it felt like, and trying to give voice to that. I suppose I've been a revolutionary all my life, and I've never been a nationalist as such with a small n, but I've been certainly in favour of an independent Scotland.
Do you remain optimistic then with your own politics?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. I'm a Marxist, you know, so it's very difficult not to be optimistic. I've often said this, I know what I'm in favour of. I'm not interested in what I'm against, except insofar as it prevents what I'm in favour of. So as I stand up and I do both sides of the tweed, I have no grouch against anybody who does not come from here, you know. Like, I don't, and I'm not in the slightest bit anti-English, but I'm extremely pro-Scottish. And it's possible to have both. Yeah. It's possible to have the pro-Scottish without being anti-English, because it's a cliche, but some of my best friends are English, and I spent big chunks of my life touring around. I probably played in every town in England. I've often said to people, the difference between a rebel and a revolutionary. A rebel knows what they're against. A revolutionary knows what they're fighting for. And it's a fine distinction, but it's very true, I think. That it's not enough to be against something. Anybody can be against things. You know, you've got to know what you're fighting for and what you're struggling for and what you're arguing for.
That's a more positive change to make, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
To be fighting towards something rather than railing against it.
Yes. And so songs like Both Sides of the Tweed, I mean, okay, it was written a long time before I got my hands on it.
I think people would assume that you had written it because it seems so intrinsically linked to a lot of what you seem to stand for.
Good. Well, I wrote the tune. Or it wasn't so much writing the tune as the tune came naturally from arising out of the words. You know, as so many songs do, you know.
What's the spring breathing jasmine and rose? What's the summer with all its gay trend? Or the splendour of autumn to those who've bartered their freedom for gain? Let the love of our land sacred rights to the love of our people succeed. Let friendship and honour unite and flourish on both sides the tweed. No sweetness the senses can achieve, which corruption and bribery binds. No brightness that gloom can e'er clear, for honour's the sum of the mind. Let the love of our land sacred rights to the love of our people succeed. Let friendship and honour unite and flourish on both sides the tweed. Let virtue distinguish the brave, place riches in lowest degree. Think them poorest who can be a slave, them richest who dare to be free. Let the love of our land sacred rights to the love of our people succeed. Let friendship and honour unite and flourish on both sides the tweed.
We mentioned earlier on you were talking about your stroke in 2016, and that your fine motor control now means that you can't play the guitar anymore. Would you be interested in singing without the guitar, or is it coming through the guitar for you?
No, the guitar's an integral part of it. And when I was a kid, my mother was a Gaelic singer, and there'd be the usual family hoolies, and my father would get pissed and want to play the guitar, so my mother would start singing something, my old man would start playing dance band chords alongside what she was doing, and she'd turn around and say, "Shut up, you're putting me off." And he'd say, "You're singing out of time." She said, "No, the song has its own time and it's not the one you're playing." And I grew up with this image of the two of them together, the guitar playing and the voice. The song has its tempo of its own, it's got its own rhythm and its own tempo, and therefore I always start, if I'm going to be doing a song, I start from the song, and the guitar has to follow the song. If it doesn't, if I've got to change anything that I'm doing song-wise in order to fit the guitar accompaniment, then I'm doing it wrong. It changes from time to time, I can do a song today and do it one way, play the guitar one way on it, and another time it'll be totally different, and sometimes it'll be the same. Just depends on what I actually hear in the song itself.
I think this would break the hearts of many that have spent years trying to master the particular version from albums. I was talking to a good friend, a sound man, maybe about a year and a half ago, and he got himself a new guitar, and he said, "I'm nearly there. I'm working on now Westland Winds." And he'd been sitting, "What's that tuning and how's he doing it?" And he was there, I'm nearly there with it. And now the news that you could play it differently every single time it's just going to break people's spirits, Dick.
Well, I'm about to contradict what I said, because New Westland Winds will probably be the same whenever I sing it, or wherever I sang it. Occasionally there'll be wee subtle nuances within verses. But the actual shape of the thing itself will not change, because one of the few things I do that was actually set in stone.
Well, that's great. That's great news.
It seemed to be the correct way to interpret. It's the way I feel the song, and what I think the song is about, and what it's saying. And I don't think I would want to sit there and do something to improve on it, or otherwise interfere with it.
Now western winds and slaughtering guns bring autumn's pleasant weather. The moorcock springs on whirring wings among the blooming heather. Now waving grain winds o'er the plain, delights the weary farmer, and the moon shines bright when I rove at night to muse upon my charmer. The partridge loves the fruitful fells, the plover loves the mountains, the woodcock haunts the lonely dells, the soaring hen the fountains. Through lofty groves the cushat roves, the path of man to shun it. The hazel bush o'erhangs the thrush, the spreading thorn, the linnet. Thus every kind their pleasure find, the savage and the tender. Some social join and leagues combine, some solitary wander. Avaunt away the cruel sway, tyrannic man's dominion, the sportsman's joy, the murdering cry, the fluttering gory pinion. But Peggy dear, the evening's clear, swift flies the skimming swallow. Sky is blue, the fields in view, all fading green and yellow. Come, let us stray our gladsome way and view the charms of nature. The rustling corn, the fruited thorn, and every happy creature. We'll gently walk and sweetly talk till the silent moon shine clearly. I'll grasp thy waist and fondly pressed swear how I love thee dearly. Not vernal showers to barren flowers, not autumn to the farmer, so dear can be as thou to me, my fair, my lovely charmer.
Now Westland Winds from Dick Gaughan, a track that has been really influential to Siobhan Miller, singer, songwriter extraordinaire. Siobhan, what does that song mean to you?
I love that song. I think when you hear the way that Dick Gaughan sings, just every single word, like the whole performance carries such depth. and it's so direct but full of like heart and emotion. It's like he's fully inside that song. And I love Dick Gaughan's voice. I love those beautiful ornaments, but I love the contrast that's going on with the guitar part. It's kind of like the guitar and the voice are these two separate living things dancing around each other, but they're also completely in sync. And I think it's such a rare skill to be able to have those two worlds happening at the same time. And like, as a listener, I'm just like, what's going on here? But at the same time, I'm just drawn into the story and all of the emotion behind it.
Now, you mentioned Dick's guitar playing there. Your dad, Brian, as a folk guitarist, was a contemporary of Dick's. You have, I imagine, this music to be the music that you have listened to since infancy. Have you known Dick since you were just tiny?
I have, yeah. Well, what an amazing person to have grown up listening to and to have been around. And yeah, absolutely. I came to Dick's music through my parents, who've been friends with him for a long time, and I was taken to folk clubs, particularly around Edinburgh. I guess that would have been when I first heard Dick Gaughan playing live, but Dick's albums would have been on in the house. And he's somebody whose music I'm still going back to listen to now all the time. And it's lovely. It's music that I think it's timeless and it connects through the generations.
I know you sing a couple of songs that Dick has made well known. How do you go about picking the things to then kind of do your interpretation? I'm thinking of, like, in particular, I Love Your Pound a Week Rise. It's also one of his best known things. How do you go about interpreting something that Dick Gaughan has done?
In a terrified fashion.
But I guess it must be kind of an intimidating thing, but there's something about the material.
Exactly. I think it comes down to the songs, and I think with the way that Dick Gaughan performs, like I said, it's about his love and belief behind the words that are being sung, and that's what I want to bring to my own version. So for all that it's daunting to sing something that Dick Gaughan has covered, because you're kind of like, well, what's the point? He's done the thing. But there's also this desire and passion in me to keep carrying on these stories because they're still as relevant today. And that the song Pound a Week Rise, I did learn from him. It's written by Ed Pickford. It's an incredible song, and it's one of these ones that's a great example of it just hits you from the word go. And that story, the rising up of the miners against Lord Robins, it's the heart of that. I just love the connection to that song because whenever I do perform it, I always say that I learned it from Dick Gaughan. And people all over the world, when I've been touring that, they come and ask, how is Dick Gaughan? I'm a huge fan. You know, he's touched people with his music over the generations across the world, and that's such a, that's a testament to his legacy.
Come all of you colliers who work down the mine, from Scotland to South Wales, from Teesdale to Tyne. I'll sing you the song of the pound a week rise, and the men who are fooled by the government's lies. And it's down you go, down below Jack, where you never see the skies, and you're working in a dungeon for your pound a week rise. In 1960, a few years ago, the mine workers' leaders to Lord Robins did go, saying we work very hard every day with our scar lives, and we ask you here and now for a pound a week rise. And it's down you go, down below Jack, where you never see the skies, and you're working in a dungeon for your pound a week rise. And up spoke Lord Robins, and he made this decree: when the output rises, then with you I will agree, but to raise up all your wages, to give to you fair pay. For I was once a miner, and I worked hard in my day. And it's down you go, down below Jack, where you never see the skies, and you're working in a dungeon for your pound a week rise.
Were you hard on yourself when you were in the studio or playing live? Were you kind of critical of your own performances? I guess to a certain extent we all have to be, because that's we're always listening and trying to improve. But I wonder what kind of relationship you had with your own performing at that time?
Very, very strange. I read a quotation once where it said, "Post-mortems do nothing for the corpse." And I thought, that's exactly, the gig's over, bump, end of story. If there's anything in it to learn it and move on.
Yeah, don't worry about the thing
tomorrow.
that's by.
You made a mistake, don't do it tomorrow.
That sounds like a pretty healthy way to look at live performance, I think. What about studio stuff?
Same way in the studio. In the studios, I was a bit stricter because I knew what I wanted the end result to be most of the time. You know, a lot of the time I was just winging it. But when I knew where it should be, then I kind of went out heavily to make that happen. And learned as much about engineering as I could and everything else, you know, and learned as much about production as it was capable of learning.
Do you have a favourite tune? Mine is Out on the Ocean. I can't get enough of that tune. Absolutely love that jig.
I mean, for playing or listening to?
Tell me both. Do you have a favourite one to listen to?
No.
Do you have a favourite one to play?
Quite probably. I think Jenny's Welcome to Charlie I really liked as a tune because it meant I could, as well as playing the tune, I could hit the bottom strings and create a drone inside it. So I loved playing that.
Dick Gaughan, thank you so much for your time on Travelling Folk.
Thank you, Anna.
What a pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed.